Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. And this movie came out in 2021, and it is Zack Snyder's official 4 hour long version of what he wanted Justice League to be, the 2017 film, which is a long story that I don't really feel as though I need to get into because I'm sure you all know it. But long story short, I'll just say this really quickly. He was working on that project, and then a tragedy happened that made him step down from the project. And Warner Brothers was like, hey, we still need to release this movie, and it's also not finished yet. So they brought Joss Whedon onto it, and he tried his best to finish the project as best he could, but also left his print instead of leaving it Zack Snyder's vision. It was kind of a Joss Whedon film, and so the movie was kind of a Frankenstein between Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon, and also Warner Brothers demanded that the movie would be no longer than 2 hours, so he had to go through those types of restrictions because I think his cut was supposed to be like 2.5 hours or something, but instead that didn't happen, and there's just a pretty long, complicated story behind this. Ultimately, Zack Snyder just was able to release his cut of the movie, and it was 4 hours long, and you didn't really necessarily have to worry about deleting scenes or the runtime, because if it's longer, that means that you keep people subscribed to a streaming service longer. And all in all, I would say this is better than the Joss Whedon cut that we got, Frankenstein monster thing, or as people like to call it, Justice League. I would say it's better than that movie, but unfortunately I didn't care for this movie at all. Like, it had a lot of problems I had with movies like Batman v Superman and Man of Steel, where I just don't really care about the characters, and the visual effects at points looked kind of goofy, and I'm not really a huge fan of everything just looking gray. Like, it didn't look as bad as Man of Steel or BVS, but at the same time, the look of the movie just didn't do this film any favors, if you ask me. And the 4:3 aspect ratio, I didn't really mind it all that much. You kind of just get used to it. And the opening scene from this movie is just the ending to BVS, and the way it was executed I found to be very goofy, and I was laughing a decent amount. And the 4 hour runtime for this movie, I do not feel is justified at all. Mostly because I don't feel as though the movie does a good job with that runtime. Like, I'm not against this movie being 4 hours long. Like, it could be longer, but I would like for that runtime to be justified. Like, what are we going to do with this runtime to justify its length? It tries to be a kind of an origin story to Cyborg, and to give the Flash a bit more of a story, and have some scenes for Aquaman to make him interesting. But it's introducing too many characters into one movie, and it just becomes a mess as a result because of this. And I think it would have been better if you just established these characters in previous movies instead of just shoving them all into this movie, which I don't even know why you would do that. Mostly because it just ruins the pacing, and also this film is trying way too hard to be epic and big. And that's mostly because of how the music is used. Like Wonder Woman's theme, like I don't even know how to describe it. And I don't really feel like yelling, but it was pretty goofy and spammed throughout the movie. Like, if you took a shot every time they used it, you would be trashed by the end of the movie, at least. Maybe even sooner. I also thought the dialogue in this movie was pretty bad. Like, no one really talked to like a real person. They all talk as if what they're talking about is the biggest thing they could ever talk about, and it's so epic. And it just really did not hit home for me. Steppenwolf, the villain of the movie, he was probably the best part of the film, if you ask me. Like, his design is improved over the Joss Whedon cuts, and whenever he's on screen, he was kind of entertaining. Not necessarily because of his character, but mostly because whenever he's on screen, that meant that the plot of this movie was moving forward. That's mostly why I liked Steppenwolf. Like, we're moving things along with Steppenwolf on screen. And things are being progressed, and we have like a plot going on. I was like, yes, we're moving. And another positive that I have for this movie is that the movie does look nice at points. There's some cool visuals in this film, and it's not terribly shot in every scene. But that's about all of my positives for this film. There's quite a few annoying conveniences in this movie that just made me roll my eyes. I'm not even going to name them off because I don't want to take too long. And there's also some annoying characters in this film. Like, I really do not like the Flash in this movie. I found it to be pretty annoying. Not as irritating from what I remember in the 2017 cut, but it's really just, like, not great, if you ask me. Like, there's less humor with this character, which I do think is improved, but that's about all I have to say about that. And there were quite a few performances in this movie that I just didn't really like. Like Ezra Miller, I don't like. Gal Gadot, I wasn't a big fan of. Ben Affleck was fine in it. Like, nothing terrible, but nothing amazing. Jared Leto was also in this movie for like one scene. He was pretty funny. Not intentionally funny, like so bad he was funny. There were also some odd choices in this movie, like some weird visions in this movie that were thrown in for no reason. Like, I don't understand why those had to be there. And also, for an action movie, there isn't too much action in this movie. This movie's 4 hours long, and there's like 4 action sequences in the entire film. Maybe I'm forgetting 1 or 2, possibly, but there's barely any action in the movie, and the ones you get aren't all that memorable. And also, the scenes with Lois Lane I found to be pointless and just did not need to be in the movie at all. And there's a lot of pointless scenes in this movie, and I don't even think I can name off all of them. Going back to this movie's runtime, there's plenty of scenes that can be cut out, and there's also a bunch of slow motion in this movie that is used for absolutely no reason. I feel as though if you just sped it up to normal time, it would make the movie about 30 to 40 minutes shorter. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it was used so much in this movie for absolutely no reason. And while I was watching this movie, I kept thinking to myself, I sat through the 2017 version. I know that movie is worse from memory, and it's aged worse as time went on in my memory as well. And I just kept thinking to myself, that movie was worse. However, I was able to sit through it because it was shorter in just one sitting without pausing it, mostly because I watched it in a theater. And this movie, I had to pause every once in a while just to get up and walk around just because I was bored. Like, I managed to watch this movie in just one day, but it did take quite a bit to sit through the entire thing. And one last thing to mention, there were points in this movie because of the licensed music and also the slow motion at times. There were points where I felt like I was watching a music video, I'm not gonna lie. Or like a ad for something else, I have no idea. But I felt like I was watching either a music video or an advertisement instead of just watching a movie, which is something that should not happen. And that's about all I have to say about Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's an improvement over the Joss Whedon cut, and that's all it really had to be, I guess. I don't think it's good. I think it's kind of dull at points. Not painfully boring, necessarily, just long for no reason, and I just didn't care about any of the characters, and there was just nothing for me here. Nothing particularly memorable, and I know a lot of people really loved this movie when it came out, and more power to you if you still love it. I just couldn't connect with it because there was nothing for me here throughout the entirety of the 4-hour runtime. And there were a lot of really strange decisions in this movie that did not need to be there, and that's pretty much how I feel about it. So I will never be watching this movie again, and with all that being said, I'm going to give Zack Snyder's Justice League a 4 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos as always. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below you thought of Zack Snyder's Justice League, and my social media links, they will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Batman, starring Adam West from 1966. So look forward to that, but until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.